For those who have probably not met, most people may not have met Simon before, but you would have seen his work. Simon is based in Perth. He's one of the smartest men I've met when it comes to understanding how to sell and how to use models to sell. And as you can see by the little tagline at the bottom of his screen, he actually has coined the phrase, the models method. We've talked a bit about the Genius model, thanks to Simon, and we've shown people a very basic concept of how to communicate. But I think the catchiest way that I introduce Simon is if you want to learn how to communicate your message on the back of a napkin, this is your guy. So Simon, I'd love to hand over to you and maybe get you to do a bit of a quick intro and fill the gaps on what I missed.
Sure, absolutely. So by way of background, let me set this up in terms of context. So a lot of people here well, everyone here is in some sort of professional capacity, you know, whether as a consultant or advisor or of some form. Can I get an indication, just by show of hands in front of the camera, the number of people that work with corporate level clients, just by show of hands?
There you go.
A few, right? I have a 25-year career as a consultant to companies like BHP in Australia and Austal Ships and Rio Tinto and Ford Australia and then Ford US, and also a lot of work with government across Australia and in Western Australia and on large scale projects. So I did all the stakeholder facilitation for the $1.4 billion Optus Stadium in Perth. I spent 6 years before the stadium was built trying to identify what everybody wanted in a stadium. The media, the sports fans, the sporting groups and different sports codes, disability access, the government, the operators of the stadium, catering. And then I had to write a brief that the architects would tender against. And then the successful architect would be chosen. And then while the builder was building, we brought those stakeholders together every 3 months during the build of the project. When the stadium was opened, it won the award for the world's best stadium. And, you know, it was because of that consultation. So the government will put 200 people in a room and say to me, we've got 200 people who are at war with each other on an issue, but they're absolutely unified in their hatred of government. And you've got them for 2 hours, you need to get them to reach agreement, right? And I have a reputation for doing that. And the secret is not that profound, quite frankly. I'm a professional facilitator. And so I just discovered that if you frustrate people for 3/4 of the available time, an energy builds, they want to solve it. So if I've got a 2-hour meeting, if for 90 minutes I just frustrate the room, what do you think? Oh, that's a good idea. Write it on a flip chart. What do you think? Well, that's a good idea. Write it on a flip chart. Basically, everything everyone says is getting captured. And what the room doesn't sense is that no one's winning here. So code for frustration is no one person is winning. Everyone's voice is being heard, right? And then at about the 3/4 mark, I figured out, I realized I could go to a whiteboard, start drawing a model, a geometric shape, and say to the room, I think I can draw this, and then facilitate the model out of the room, get them to fill in the parts. And I'm spending that first 3/4 figuring out what the model's going to be. And then once I got it in my head, I would facilitate it out of the room and they put the labels on the parts. And in 30 minutes, we'd get a model and they'd say, that's it, that's the answer. Why didn't you give that to us at the start? And I'm saying, because you built it. And then I'd write the report for the government on the basis of that. The model is a visual footprint of the discussion of the room. Who's been in rooms where there was a big conversation and then you had pages of summary notes that come back and words. So please write this down, folks, please write this down. Words are always in dispute. The fact is, words are always in dispute. And fundamentally, it's because people have a different level of vocabulary and people place different meanings on words. Hang on, where'd you go? Are you still there? Yeah.
We're still here.
I'm hoping my computer's not just starting to do weird stuff all of a sudden. But words are always in dispute. When you catch a visual representation of a conversation and people can get this one snapshot of the whole thing, it's magic, right? And so I've used visual models to sell and to facilitate for the better part of 25 years now. And I want to set some context. So I mean, I could go into my own background, but that's not relevant other than what I've just shared with you. You know, I started life in electronics, and then I thought I'd want to be a high school teacher. And when I finished my Bachelor of Education, they sent me to a school in Perth that's designed to cure those vocational aspirations for people that are not cut out to do it. And that school cured my vocational aspirations in less than 12 months. And I realized I couldn't work with teenagers for the next 40 years. I needed to work with adults. And so ended up in corporate life as an executive manager with CSR Building Materials, and then into consultancy. So, but it's really about the models and why they work. And I want to set a couple of contexts around that. And then I'd love to leave with some models today and a sense of just why the Genius model is so important, but also leave you the Genius model is a flagship model. It's a bigger model to build, but I want to also give you some models you could be using immediately in your selling to reposition price and to actually let people understand why they should be working with you. But let me firstly just talk about a couple of background concepts. And I'm just going to share screen for a moment to make this more crisp for you. And then I've got to find you all again. There you are. So, put you in the middle screen. So humans have an intensity. All humans have an intensity, from high intensity to low intensity emotionally, and in how we think about things. And the other dimension of this is time. Time is the great leveler. So one of the most important dimensions of business is time. You are in one of three time zones at any point in time. You are behind the market, you're with the market, or you're ahead of the market. Now, the people that are behind the market lose in business. The people that are with the market compete. The people that are ahead of the market generally win. At any point in time, you're in one of those three time zones. You're also in one of those three time zones when it comes to making the sale. You're either behind the client, you're with the client, or you're ahead of the client. What happens with a lot of selling is the salesperson is ahead of the client because the salesperson wants to close the deal sooner. Let me open the chat. When does the customer want to close the deal? The salesperson wants to close the deal sooner. When does the customer want to close the deal? Just type into the chat any thoughts you have around that. When does the customer want to close the deal? Give me time to take a sip of my coffee. Type that into the chat for me. At the moment, no one knows when the customer, when they are ready, Kelly, when they see the value, when they're comfortable that you understand and can help, when they have confidence in the outcome, when their need arises. So basically, when they're ready, when they trust you, whatever their criteria is, when they're ready, right? And any effort to force the customer's pace is pressure. And you can't use pressure to sell to somebody who's already under pressure. So when someone's in a situation that is not working for them, they're feeling a level of pressure, and it's hard to use pressure to sell to somebody who's already under pressure. What that makes you is an icky, sticky salesperson. And you're not, you're professional people. Who would rather sell professionally as a professional person rather than sell as a salesy salesperson? By show of hands. Who'd rather sell as a professional person rather than a salesy salesman? Of course, right? False scarcity and urgency, only buy it now because it's only available in this break, is a crock. If someone comes and offers you the same money a week later, you'll take it, right? So you can't use pressure to sell to somebody who's already under pressure. And so what a lot of salespeople want to do is push the time scale and get it to happen sooner. It's more important to understand the customer's intensity. And we know that humans are hardwired for resistance. So humans have they have a high intensity for resistance. They have an automatic system for saying no. And we know this to be true because, you know, you go into a shop, you choose to go into that shop, and someone comes up to you and says, "May I help you?" And you say, "No, thanks, just looking." What the hell? You walked in there and they're offering to help, and you've refused to help because we've got an automatic system for saying no. And 3 minutes later, you will go up to that same shop assistant and say, hey, do you have one of these things? Now, my 3 daughters worked retail while they were at university, and that's the bane of their life. We went up and helped you. We went up to offer to help you. You said no. Now we're talking to another customer and you're hovering around to interrupt because you want us to ask this question. But we're hardwired with a high intensity for resistance to say no. Now, that's not a problem until we recognize that humans have a low intensity for acceptance. We do not have an automatic system for saying yes. And we know that's true because someone comes up to you and they says, someone comes up to you and they go, Ray, Stephen, Irene, Kath, you're amazing. And you go, no, it's nothing. I'm just doing my job. Right? We are not good at acceptance. And so we get this paradigm where the acceptance and resistance curves are far apart. And sales, the point of conversion is when those curves reverse. That's when conversion happens. It doesn't mean that they're paying the money yet, but it means they've bought you. The point of conversion is when those 2 curves reverse, where they have a high level of acceptance and a lower level of resistance around you and your idea than they do around anyone else. So this part is the sale. And in order to get there faster, to bring this point of conversion sooner, a lot of people use pressure. And if you put pressure inside a closed container like this, it just pushes the sides further apart. So we want to actually get to this point of conversion so that out this side, we can turn that into commerce. We can make the sale. So if the left-hand side is the sale, once the curves have reversed and they've bought you and your idea, you can facilitate. Just facilitate the process. Hey, I love this. How does that work? Well, it's simple. You give me your credit card and we start working together. That's all that's left to do now is the actual process of getting into sync with each other. And one of the things I discovered over a lot of years of doing this is that I can move people to this point of conversion very quickly if I just start working on a visual model with them. Because what I'm doing is bringing them together in the model. Without the model, there's me and my truth. And I think my truth is pretty wonderful. After all, I'm selling it. And then there's them and their truth. And their truth is overlaid with the problem. And so I push my sale, I push my truth towards them. And people are taught when force is applied, even force done for good reasons is applied, we should push back. We should get this gap. Has anyone got a teenage or adult son or daughter who you gave some really solid advice to, which is the most obvious of my daughters are 27, 32, and 34, right? The most obvious sound advice that all of my 61 years could possibly share with them. And they go, I didn't want advice. I was just telling you. I go, well, what the hell are we having a conversation for then? My job is advice, and I've kind of been through this a few times now. So why don't you just do this? No, I'm going to push back, And so this is this compete and retreat, I call it. It's the compete and retreat of the traditional sales process. And when it's language-based, words are always up for dispute. And so when people are in a situation like this, what we often do is put a mediator into the mix, the coaching triad, because the mediator goes to, in every relationship, someone is weaker and someone is stronger. Now, the person who is less emotionally involved is the one that's in control. My daughters don't like hearing that when it comes to marriage and partners and things like that, but the person who's least in love is the one running the marriage, quite frankly. The person who is least emotionally involved is the one that's in control. And usually the customer is more emotionally involved, right? And so they're the weaker party at an emotional level, and they feel at risk. And a lot of people come to the buying process with an underlying sense of suspicion. So the mediator can go to this person and say, hey, they can ask them, hey, what's going on? And this person can share, because the mediator seems to be impartial, seems to be neutral. And then the mediator can go to the other person and they can provide them with some intel. Here's what's going on. Oh, that's interesting. Can you share this insight with them? Because that might actually help change their perception and their paradigm. And so then the mediator can go and now share that insight and ask and get more information back and then deliver the intel and the insight. Now, the problem is, and what that does is that it elevates the communication. And when you elevate the communication, you elevate the value. But we can't, none of us can bring a mediator into the sales process. That would be ridiculous. I'm here to sell you some services. I've brought my mediator with me. Let's go. It's nuts, right? What I discovered was the model as the mediator. The model becomes the mediator. The model is asking the question and gathering information. And because it's in a framework that we've designed, it's automatically located as a piece of intel, which allows us to share a bit of insight back through the model. We move from my truth and their truth to a shared truth in the middle. Because what's really happening is this subtle but important shift in dynamic away from compete and retreat to the two of us sitting side by side, working on something together in between us. And the moment that happens, everything changes. So let me pause for a second because I kind of move fast. There's a lot I want to share. Is this actually making sense and resonating and landing? Because all I'm doing at the moment is setting up why models work. It's an important piece of work. Everyone comfortable?
Simon?
Yes, let's do that in front of the screen and then I can talk.
100% comfortable. And you're sort of articulating, we use different models. So we use a ladder, which shows people how to aspire in their business. And you're 100% right. As soon as you draw it, it's a third party. And I think a lot of people don't do this. They try the compete retreat. So you've articulated it perfectly here.
The model gets past the critical faculty, basically. And here's why. If we use words only, whether written or spoken, and only 11% of the information coming into the brain from the outside world comes through the auditory channel, only 11%. About 3% comes through the olfactory sense, so smell, and about 1 or 2% comes through gustatory, so taste. So licking and sniffing are pointless when it comes to sales. They just don't cover any territory for you at all. Auditory is only 11%. Kinesthetic is about 7%, like how people feel. But 83% comes through the optic nerve, comes through the visual channel. 55% of the brain's reflex response is attached directly to the optic nerve. The animal hears the sound and goes on the alert, but they run when they see the danger, right? And so when we use words only, the prospect, the client, the team member, if you're a leader in a business, you're a salesperson. Your first sale every day is to your team. How many people have staff, just by show of hands? Great. If you have staff and you're the leader of the business, your first job every morning is to go in and sell the business to your team. That's your first job every day. The first sale every day is from the leader of the business to the team. Here's why what we do matters. And here's why it matters that we do it at an exceptional level. So I used to run a sales team of 30 people and 3 factories and I don't know, about 300 staff across 2 states, Western Australia and South Australia for CSR building materials. That's Gyprock, Bradford, Hebel, aerated concrete blocks and so on. And my first job every day is to make the sale to my managers who are leading the rest of the team. So every morning, back in those days, it wasn't Zoom, we had to get on the phone. So I had a morning phone call every morning with my managers across 2 states. And the only purpose of that phone call was to sell the business to them. The first sale every day. So whether you're selling to a team or you're selling to a customer or you're influencing a regulator or you're trying to influence someone that lends you money or you're trying to get a supplier to serve you well, the 2 big systems in business, The two most important systems in business are the system for thinking and the system for influence. Now, people don't think of them as systems, but a business is only as good as the idea on which it's built and the quality of the thinking in the business. And then the ability to influence people to make choices in your favor, suppliers to serve you as well as they can, regulators to let you operate, banks and other people to fund you, staff to work hard for you, customers to buy from you, and so on. And I was hunting for this system for thinking and influence, and then I found out that it was communication, and more specifically, how you communicate, and models became that process. When you focus someone's gaze, you focus their attention. Where you get them to look at is what they're thinking about, quite frankly. And you know, when you've had a conversation, you're in a conversation with somebody and their eyes are darting over your shoulder and looking past you and looking at their phone, do you feel like you have their attention? And the answer is no. If they're looking at you, you know they're listening to you. Where you focus someone's gaze, you focus their attention. And so, you know, when we use words only, people say, oh, I hear you. And quite frankly, it's just noise. And so if we can give people visual access to the idea, if we can increase their ability to see the conversation, what we see, they will say, oh, I see. And what we see is always more interesting than what we hear. Who remembers that story about the boys' soccer team in Thailand that ended up in the cave? Who remembers that story, right? I remember that story coming on the news, and remember when it was first reported, there was no visuals of it? It was just a report read out on the news. I don't know about any of you, but my first thought was, guys, you walked in, walk out before the water comes. I don't understand the problem. If you walked in that far, you must be able to get out again, right? And then we saw the visuals of the cave and how narrow it was and up and down it was. And so the water might not have hit them yet, but it's already flooded the low parts of the... Now I'm thinking, how foolish were you going in there? Yeah, so close to the wet season, but it became a whole lot more interesting, right? What we see is more interesting. What really changes that we focused on when we were building models was if you give people structural access. So the human brain is a meaning-making machine. It has to make sense of. That's its job. The only way it can protect you from the world is if the subconscious can make sense of. So if you can create something that bypasses the critical faculty, people go, oh, I get it. And that is believable. So this model that I'm drawing for you at the moment is just a model that I made up. But it's way more believable than if I was just talking about this stuff with you. It's also easier for you to track the conversation. I've covered a lot of territory in the last few minutes, and it's all summarized visually in front of you. And so then when people say, oh, okay, I see, and I get it, this becomes desirable. Now, the key part, there's a super green zone hidden here, up in the top right quadrant. And if we think about these as performance scales, so structural performance from 1 to 10, and that curve is on 8, and visual performance from 1 to 10, that curve is on 8. If we deliver the model, we call it choreography. There's no accidents in how I'm walking through this model with you. I'm following a really specific pathway, and at certain points I've used very deliberate punchlines. We call them punchline effect. Very deliberate punchlines that have been layered into the model to create this instantaneous paradigm shift between where you thought it might be going to where it is going. I studied stage magic and comedy, and the whole idea of a trick or a joke is the setup, punchline or reveal. The job of the punchline or reveal is to create a paradigm you never saw coming. The best jokes in the world have a setup, and then they deliver a paradigm you never saw coming. And that paradigm is the moment of realization. Here's the difference between being a presenter versus being a sage. A presenter imparts information. A sage creates instant moments of paradigm shift that no one saw coming. And once it happens, they can't stop thinking about it. That's when you step into a room with some real wisdom. And so at this level, desirable becomes viable. And so, you know, we have this whole structure of geometry, content, choreography that make a model work. And so, you know, if I think about that as the backdrop to models and why they work, what I want to move into now is a bit of positioning, thinking about positioning from a strategic sales point of view of you as experts and professionals, and then talk about a couple of models that could help you in your selling. But I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah, people trust stuff on paper, Glenn. Quite right. So here's the thing. We live in an increasingly digital world, right? And ClickFunnels, like click here, call to action, get the lead magnet. TV's moved from analog, you know, that goes snowy and then loses the picture, to blue screen or a picture. We live in an increasingly digital world, and the world of marketing has really told everybody the way to market is go online, have a website, use social media and everything else, get clicks, get likes, so on and so forth. Yet, humans are still analog. Humans have a range of emotions and beliefs. And so we're trying to sell to an analog creature using digital technology. So you will seldom see me using slides in a presentation. If I'm speaking to a room of 2,000 people, I will be walking around the room with my iPad on screen, held wirelessly, drawing like I'm drawing for you now. And it's always my presentation people want to get copies of, because the drawing draws people in. The drawing lets people come with you on the journey. It's just an amazing process. Any questions before I jump into this whole idea of strategic positioning, and then into some models that could be helpful? Any questions at all? Or are we good?
I think we're good, Simon.
Great.
You've got people in the story.
So let's have a look at this. So you talked about the ladder, and how you use the ladder, David. We call that a pre-frame model, and this is a tool. This is a version of that, right? So all of the models are tools, and so the pre-frame model is that ladder that says, so there's nothing more powerful for a prospect than to meet someone who truly gets them. When someone meets someone who truly gets them, so we have this concept we call buyer safety that we teach. And the idea is the customer, the prospect, should feel safer with you at every step of your sales process, your marketing and sales process, than they would without you. At every step of your marketing and sales process, the customer should feel safer with you than they would without you, so that the safest thing for them to do is to buy from you. And so many sales processes are not based on buyer safety. They're actually based on pressure, scarcity, urgency. In fact, they're based on making the customer, the prospect, feel less safe about their situation and things. And so if we think about that concept of buyer safety, when the customer meets someone who knows them, gets them better than anyone else they've met, that's the first step of buyer safety. The second thing is that the customer is meeting someone who gets the situation better than anyone else they've met. So I understand the situation and I understand you. Just write this little kind of thought bubble down, because there are only two things that people are buying from anyone. Everyone's buying the same two things, no matter what anyone is selling, right? The first thing people are buying is, we all want someone or something to make us safe. Now, as humans, we don't actually necessarily want to behave safely. You know, we want to drink, we want to smoke, we want to overeat, we want to drive too fast, you know, etc. So isn't it, it's quite intriguing that companies, large companies, mining companies and stuff, have to have whole programs to get people to work safely. Put on your safety glasses, your personal protective equipment and everything else. I would have thought, wouldn't you want to protect yourself? But no, humans don't want to behave safely, but they want someone or something else to make them safe. Right? So the first thing people are buying from you is safety. And really, if they're buying safety from you, they're buying risk reversal. That's the first thing people are buying, risk reversal in the context of what you sell. So if it's a car, I want to be sure I'm not buying a lemon. I want to be sure that you're going to back it up with great service and support, right? If it's an insurance policy, will you actually pay out if I make a claim? If it's a consultancy project, Is this going to work in our company or in our business or in my situation? Like risk reversal. The second thing people are buying, and no one really wants to admit this, but everyone wants to win. What that means is they want to beat that health problem they're wrestling with. They want a better than average result in the context of what you do. I want a better car or house than my neighbors. I want a better business than my business buddies. People want to win in the context of what you do. So once again, you're buying a car. I've done a lot of work with the motor industry. Someone buys a car and they turn up at their home with their brand new car in the driveway. They don't open the door and drive straight into the garage because it's important to let the neighbours see they've got a new car. And so they turn up and they park in the driveway, and the neighbour comes out and goes, "Oh, Simon, you've got a new car." I go, "Yeah, I do." "Yeah, it looks nice. I know, it's a fantastic car, blah, blah, blah." And I tell you what, I got a great trading price and I've found the best dealership in town. If you want to buy a car, let me know. Right? Because I want to win. It's just that no one wants to talk about it. And so every sale is risk reversal and a win. Every sale is risk reversal and an aspiration, right? And so buyer safety is a big deal. And so what's happened in the world of sales, led by marketing. Marketing is one of those areas that takes things and usually destroys them in a relatively short period of time. So a good example right now is ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. And marketing is doing the best job it can right now to destroy any advantages that will give anyone. Right? So I don't know if ChatGPT has existed for 3 months now. It went to 1 million users in 5 days and went to 100 million users in 2 months. It is the fastest uptake of any product in history. And ChatGPT 4 does amazing things. I could bang on about artificial intelligence, but you know, what is still uniquely human is context, character, conscience, confidence, competency. That's what is still uniquely human. Artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, can give you concepts, content. It can give you consistency. But what is uniquely human is context. Why does this even matter? Character, the values you come with, the conscience you have about what you do, the competency and the confidence. No one can buy from you at a higher level of confidence than you display about what you're selling. No one can buy from you at a higher level of confidence than the confidence you're displaying. It's just that simple, right? The first form of risk reversal is confidence. And so marketing usually destroys things quite quickly in order to get an edge, and in no time, the advantage is gone. And so once upon a time, marketing said to people, you've got a complex product or service, you've got a complex solution, turn it into a product or a system. And people became vendors, and that meant the market started to buy from you based on price. Well, if you've got a system, how come yours is more expensive than this other company that's got a system for X? So the buyer wants to reduce you. Buyers have this reduction. They want to turn you into apples and oranges discussion. You sell an orange and they want to call it an apple so they can compare it to the price of another apple. Right? And that's what happens the moment you turn your complex solution into a product or service. And so they're going, I get it that you've got an orange and that's an apple and yours is $2 and the apple's $1, but they're both fruit. So why is yours $2? Well, because oranges are better. Are they though? I mean, they squirt everywhere and they're kind of a little more bitter, and apples are sweeter, particularly if it's a pink lady, which is the best apple in the world, in my opinion. But they're both fruit, so why aren't they the same price? Well, because they're different. No, they're not. They're both fruit. As soon as you go to product, the market wants to shop on price. So then the marketing world said, oh, we've got it, authority-based marketing. Now, this little bit's going to offend some people. I'll just say that up front. So authority-based marketing, content marketing, push a ton of content out in the marketplace and call yourself a thought leader. And my suggestion to everybody I ever speak to is never call yourself a thought leader again. Because we've all seen that person on LinkedIn put a post up calling themselves a thought leader that only 2 people looked at. So to be a thought leader, you need 2 things. You need an original thought and you need followers. If you have an original thought and no followers, you're just a great thinker. And if you've got a bunch of followers, but it's not your original material, you're a great presenter, speaker, entertainer, right? So, thought leadership is a commoditized product today because everyone's using it. And the only people that never call themselves a thought leader are the true thought leaders. But the market comes to the thought leader for information. And because of this, they want it to be free. Who's come across that problem? Like, hey, I'd love to have a coffee, have a bit of a chat. Happens to me all the time. People go, hey, I'd love to have a coffee and, and get what I do turned into a model. I go, that's what I charge people for. I'm happy to have a coffee, but it's going to cost a lot compared to other coffees, People want free information from the thought leader. So then there are some people that step into this space where they go, I'm the hero to the client. And it's this sense of stability that you're offering. And what you're bringing to the client is strength. Now, this is a genuine position that is worthwhile. When you're the hero to the client, you occupy this position of strength. The problem is both of these levels require you to sell on ego. Your ego. I'm the thought leader. I'm the hero. And no one wants to buy your ego. Who's been to conferences and seen someone presenting, look, I apologize if I offend anybody here, if you've ever done this, but, there's just some stuff we should start calling out. Who's been to conferences watching people speak, and the first 5 to 10 minutes of someone's speech is how they travel the world and they've got awesome cars and they're doing it for their kids and their family and their favourite charity, right? Who's seen that? Like, I don't care. I don't care. Simon Sinek said people don't care what you do until they know why you do it, and I don't agree with him. Now, when I say that at conferences, there's a palpable intake of breath in the room because find your why has almost become sacrosanct. You can't attack it. But people don't care what you do until they know why you do it. I don't agree. A more accurate statement would have been people don't care what you do until they know that they are the reason why you do it. That would make more sense. Like, I don't care what charity you support. I don't care what your interests are. I don't care about your family. I don't really care about you that much. I care about me. I don't want to buy your ego. I want to buy my own ego. I want to be the hero in my own story. And so if we can elevate above, and every hero has a sage. So Luke Skywalker, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but everyone kind of has the visual in their heads. Luke Skywalker is the hero, and there is I can see Prosper doing the Star Wars thing down the bottom. And Luke's sage was Obi-Wan Kenobi, but then Yoda, right? And there's this famous scene where Luke isn't sure how he's going to win this thing, and Yoda picks up the lightsaber and says, "Come at me, Luke, with your lightsaber." And Luke says, "No, Master, I'll kill you." And Yoda goes, "No, come at me, Luke." Eventually, Luke gets angry because he can't get past Yoda's defense. And then Yoda flicks his lightsaber and disarms Luke. And Luke doesn't know what happened. And Yoda hasn't broken sweat. Yoda's smaller and physically weaker than Luke. And he even closed his eyes when he did it. He wasn't even looking. And Luke's bemused. How could that possibly happen? And Yoda just says, "It's the Force, Luke." Because the sage has this wisdom that is undeniable. And the sage is coming from a place of truth and cause very often. And the sage has these 3 distinct qualities. The sage has a profound genius about them. They don't sell from ego. They sell from wisdom. The sage has a powerful calm. They don't sell from pressure. They sell from presence. People just feel good when they're around them. And then the third thing is the sage has this, I'm just going to shrink that down a little bit, give myself some room. The sage has this practical simplicity. Some people, they don't sell from complexity. They sell from clarity. Some people try to use more complex language to sell a complex product or service. It can't work. You can't sell complexity with more complexity. And so we think of the models as these little parcels of practical simplicity. But as soon as you start drawing a model, people slip into this calming space. It bypasses the critical faculty. And it goes straight in through the visual cortex. And a model allows you to show up differently to everyone else in the marketplace. When you vacate this hero space and become the sage, who might step into that hero space? Type it into the chat. Who might step into the hero space if you vacate that space and become the sage? The client, of course, Kat. And you're going to make more sales if you make the client the hero in their own story than if you make them the victim to your story. But you can do it so subtly just by becoming the sage in that space. And so everything changes. Now, this is a model that we call the pre-frame model, and it's a positioning model, and it's like the ladder, David, that you were talking about, just done in a different way, right? And what it's actually saying to the marketplace, you could all use something like this. What it's saying to the marketplace is, I get the whole picture. Has anyone got a sense that I've studied a lot of this, a fair bit, and I've got a pretty good view on this stuff? Who by show of hands kind of gets a sense that I've got a fairly good picture of this, right? Because of the model. And then if I said, now I've calibrated, this is a highly calibrated model. I've calibrated it so that most people I speak to are going to have to put themselves in the amber zone. And then I'm going to call it out, and they're going, oh my goodness, that's me. Everything that everyone's asking me for free stuff, blah, blah, blah. He gets me. Now, what is implied in the model is that I can show you how to get to here. Otherwise, I would never have drawn the model. But where in that conversation, if at all, did you hear me selling? But I was selling the whole time. Does that make sense? This is the basis of my genius model. If we work with people, I can find it. I gave myself a lot of blank paper. If we work with people, we're going to help them have certainty in selling by having richer, deeper conversations with anyone else, with their customers they have with anyone else, have a superior conversion, rate, speed, and quality, and have greater credibility in the marketplace than anyone else. And we're going to help you do that by showing you how to move from ego to wisdom and display profound genius. We're going to show you how to step into powerful, calm, and move from pressure to presence through models. And we're going to show you how to communicate with such practical simplicity that people see you as a simplifier, not a complexifier. There are two people in the world, the people that simplify and the people that multiply. People are buying simplification or multiplication. And we're going to show you how to do that by helping you find greater market intimacy through the thinking frameworks of a key model, show you how to communicate incontestable value through one model that can take people from superficial to deep in 3 minutes, and show you how to use models to purposefully position yourself in the marketplace. We're going to show you the biosafety framework. We're going to show you how to challenge people conversationally, even on things that they're attached to. And we're going to show you how to promise people a future, which is one of the models I want to give you before we finish, that they can't deny. Sell people their future, not your features. And then we're going to show you how to turn that into a structured sales sequence, a models-based sales sequence with messages modeled for clarity and retention, because people remember what they see more than what they hear, and then step you through choreography. I've already sold all of that to you in the conversation up to this point. Did anyone feel like you were being sold to? But this is how we do it. And so in the sales process, people, the emotional movements of the sale, people trigger curiosity. They're going, who could help me? When someone's got a problem, who could help me? And we want to position some paradigm shift models so that you show up and speak differently to everywhere else. You've identified the core paradigms that they have been wrestling with, but you make them visual. And then when that's resolved, and that happens in the marketing, they've got tension. The next emotional movement is tension. Okay, well, why would I need to do this, and why would I need to do it with you? You've just seen that model in action, the pre-frame model. And then they go, okay, well, that's great. Well, what does this look like? Now we're in the qualifying phase. What does this look like? What exactly does deep value look like? And we're going to use an iceberg to do that. There's a specific way of using the iceberg, very, very specific, highly choreographed way. And so they go, okay, that's great. So I need confidence to move forward. How does this work, and how will this work for me? And the genius model is that. It's the flagship model. It captures all of your genius into a single framework. We built a model for Austal ships, who are currently building 10% of the US Navy fleet, that showed how they build and support ships in battle, and it takes 7 minutes to walk through the model. So when you're presenting to a procurement team and the most senior naval officer says, how come no one else has explained defence shipbuilding that simply for me before? That's the moment you win a multi-billion-dollar contract. Because simplification is more powerful than complexification. And then they go, okay, well, when should I do this? The emotional movement and commitment. Well, now is the best time to start. And this is the futures model, which I do want to give you before we leave. So there's this line down the middle through here, which is a really important line to understand. That line is where conversion occurs. Because up to this point, the customer is talking to you and everybody else based on their current circumstances. And they're talking to you and everybody else out of interest. Like, what's out there? What could help me? They actually make the decision to buy from someone, hopefully you, after they get confidence that you can help them based on their history. What I mean by that is no one's buying in a vacuum. Your customers have bought services that you provide from other people in the past. Or they've had a go at it themselves. And they want to be protected from their failures of the past and the failures of others in the past. Every sale is an insurance policy. This model is the insurance policy. And while Simon Sinek says people don't care what you do until they know why you do it, I'm going to say how is more important in the complex sale than why. They won't make the purchase until they have confidence that what you do is going to work for them. But you've got to do it in a way that doesn't equip them with the knowledge to have a crack at DIY. Because given a good plan, I'll have one more go myself and I might not make the same mistakes. So we've got to sell know-how, K-N-O-W, with know-how, N-O. Know-how too, but we've got the know-how, and that's the job of the Genius model. So the models-based selling process is a series of models that position people through marketing, qualifying, selling, and converting. It's really important to understand that the point of conversion occurs when the customer's curves reverse, acceptance and resistance, and they have confidence that what you do is going to work for them. That's why they can't buy at a higher level of confidence than the confidence you're displaying. But the moment you start walking through a model, you start talking with confidence. So let me pause there for a moment, see if there's any questions. I know I'm kind of fire hosing everybody at the moment, but I'm really doing this to entertain myself rather than you. I'm having fun, and so that's kind of how I gauge things. But I'm happy to take any questions, David, and then I'd be and you know, we don't have the time to actually go through the Genius model, but you've just seen me walk through it, the choreography of it, in a real brief version. There's more detail to it than that, but I'd be happy to take any questions. And then David, what I'd love to do is just give people the futures model, because that will sell, right?
Yeah, look, I think they can Google the models method and Simon, and he does a presentation on the Genius model in layers. Obviously, there's a lot in it. I don't think there's any way we can cover it all today.
No, so, there is a page on the website that is about the Genius model.
Perfect. But I think what you've demonstrated today is you've actually used what you teach people to get people to a point where they go, this guy's amazing. He's the Yoda. And so I think if there's any questions, throw them into the chat box. If not, let's get into the futures model, because I'm excited about this part too. The processing.
Who can I get an example of something to sell, something someone does?
There's a volunteer. Marianne, let's hear from you.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yes, hi, I'm Marion.
Yes.
My business is EcoLease. We are small business finance brokers, so predominantly equipment and vehicle finance.
Great. And business to business, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Before I do that, there's a quick question about what tools am I using. Let me Zoom-wise. Zoom goes to an audience. And when you want to share screens with Zoom and things like that, it's kind of clunky. The ability to switch backwards and forwards with screens like I'm doing here doesn't exist in Zoom. I use a program which I'm pretty sure David's using as well, called Ecamm Live. Judging on your screen.
Yep, exactly the
Okay.
same. Ecamm Live and an iPad.
So I've got my cameras, 2 cameras going into Ecamm Live. My iPad goes into Ecamm Live. The mics go into Ecamm Live, and then Ecamm Live pumps a virtual cam and mic into Zoom. That means I can have scenes set up in Ecamm Live. This is a scene. This is a scene. This is a scene. I can have a scene set up that plays a video as soon as I go to it. I'm recording in Ecamm Live now. I record everything on the fly. There's no editing when I record something. I just have it all set up and then I swap scenes I'm using the Elgato Stream Deck. The Elgato Stream Deck, hang on. Let me show that. I'm using the Elgato Stream Deck to swap scenes. I just press a button. Hang on. I just press a button and the scene swaps. So it's that fast. Same with share screen for Zoom and that sort of thing. I'm using an iPad with Notability, which is probably the best live drawing program I've come across, and I've tested many because it's so simple. If you're a Windows user, your equivalent to Ecamm is a product called OBS, Oscar Bravo Sierra, if you're a Windows user. Does the same thing as Ecamm Live. Let's talk about the futures model. So, Marion, it was funding basically to small business, correct?
Yes.
So one of the ways is to show people their future, right? Elevate above their future. I'm actually just going to walk through as if I was talking to someone who's a potential business loan client, right? So, Marion, here we are today having this conversation, and what I know for sure is that it isn't really about today for you in business. It's about the future, isn't it? I mean, you're borrowing money for some future purpose. You want to get some future. Why do you want to borrow the money from a future perspective? You be the client, Marion. Why do you want to borrow the money from the future perspective?
To help grow my business.
Okay, but why do you want to grow the business?
I want to be successful.
Okay,
Feel
so
successful.
so if you're able to spend some money that you currently don't have in your own hands in terms of cash, the expectation is that funding would unlock a level of success for you.
Yes.
What would be that? How would you know that you've been successful because of the funding? What would you see that tells you you're being successful because of the funding?
I'd see more produce going out the door, growing customers, growing customer base, new streams of income because we're selling different products.
Right. So more produce, more customers, more money.
Yep.
Fabulous. So borrowing money can give you more money, give you access to that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, right. What if that doesn't happen? That, no one likes to use the word failure, but actually in business, we have to be willing to face the potential for failure. If you don't get access to money, how's that going to play out in terms of the kind of failure that you'd see because you didn't have the money?
Frustrated staff, unhappy customers because I'm not able to deliver what I say I'm going to do. A shrinking business, potentially going out of business.
Sure. Yeah, well, down here, you could, you lose the business potentially. But before we get to that, just unhappy people.
Yes.
Unhappy staff, unhappy customers, and a shrinking business. Great. So the thing is, Marion, people think the pathway to the future is a straight line, but it's not. It's a curve. Time compounds everything. It's one of the things that time does. And that curve occurs when people just drift. And drift always heads downwards. When people don't make decisions to go and borrow money because they're fearful of the process of borrowing. Have you come across that? This fear of I'm going to borrow, oh my goodness.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, right. And so fear can cause drift. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, definitely.
And is it possible that sometimes people borrow money badly And that puts them on the red line, badly structured borrowing. Can that put them on the red line?
Yes, that can happen.
Sure. Remember, you're the customer, you're not you.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Can you understand how that could happen? If you don't have a
Yes.
well-structured access to money or line of funding, that could
Yes.
actually put you on the red line as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And the pathway up to success is also compounding, but accelerates upwards, right?
Mm.
And that happens when people make informed
Mm.
decisions.
Mm.
They make all the right decisions based on all the right information. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And what sort of time frame are you imagining you're going to be wanting to borrow this money over? Like, how fast do you want to get to here?
Within the next 5 years.
Okay, so let's say 5 years. Can you see that if you wait for 5 years to get the money, the gap is going to be impossible to jump?
Hmm.
Like, people say you can't predict the future, but you actually can. It's green or it's red.
Yes.
And right now, you don't have the money, so you're on the red line. Is that a fair statement?
It is. Yep.
And you probably aren't too clear about what the perfect structure would be for that money.
Correct. Yep.
So right now, you're as close as you're ever going to be to being on that green line, right in this moment. And usually here's what we find out when we work with people. They need some kind of cleanup, recalibration, or reset in terms of how they've funded the business and how they've structured some things. People come to us for one loan, and it's actually worthwhile having a conversation about total debt servicing and total loan. We're not a one loan company, we're a funding partner.
Yep.
To help you get access to the best money at the best value with the best structures. And then it's a matter of staying on that green line all the way, making sure that you don't push the business into debt you can't handle, but you're also getting the most money available to be able to drive that green line. Does that make some sense?
Yep. Sounds good.
Here's what happens with people and borrowing. People don't fall off the green line and go to red. They behave their way off the green line. No one falls off the green line. They just behave their way off the green line. We do 3 things with our clients. We help you jump to the green line. We help you stay on the curve, ride the curve. And if your business starts to fly along earlier than the 5 years, we can also help you to accelerate that result through money. So I know that we're just talking about the one loan at the moment, but in our world, we've got to make sure we protect you from the risk. We've got to reverse the red line risk on this and make sure that when we help you get a loan or funding, we're putting you in a position to win. So, you know, do you think you actually want to go ahead and have that recalibration conversation and make sure this is set up properly? And then once we've done that, if it makes sense for us to work together and for us to find you the money, we'll just go ahead and do that.
Yep.
Is that a conversation we should have?
Absolutely.
The curves are reversed.
Yeah.
And now it's just about rates and that sort of thing. But they'll just get you to get a different loan at a better rate if the one that you're looking at isn't working. Does that make some sense? And is that a reasonable demonstration? Now, I don't know what you do. I don't sell money or anything else.
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
So, guys, the futures model is a powerful tool. It's my favorite. Everyone wants the genius model. My favorite model is the futures model. It is such a power because it's truth. You can't, drift and decision determines success or failure. Life is that simple. And we actually can predict the future. Every loan you take will either put you on the green line or the red line. And before you sign the document, are you certain which line it's putting you on? Right? Would be an interesting line for you to use. This one model takes the average 90-minute financial planning sales conversation to 15 minutes. Because the real kicker is, how long do you want to wait before you get that money and start riding on the curve? Like financial planning, how long do you want to wait before you get yourself set up for retirement? And the client goes, I want to start right now. And at that point, the financial planner is usually having to say, well, we've got some compliance stuff we've got to walk through first. They're 15 minutes into the sales conversation and the client's good to go. Like, let's do it. Let's make the plan. No, we've got to give you disclosure. We've got to show you how we get paid and all this sort of stuff. The futures model is such a powerful model. I know that we're right on the hour, David, but
Yes.
if there's one model,
who can stop you when you're on a roll, and Marion's going to offer you a job straight into the break. I think
I know you're in the middle of an event. I'm happy to take some questions. I don't want to blow your.
no, that's fine. If there's any questions, now's your chance, guys. If you want to get a coffee with Simon, it's super expensive. But if you want to ask him a question, you can ask him right now. But you've blown me away because you've used your own product to demonstrate your product, and you've just taken a random sort of role play and turned it into a compelling sales pitch.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it's just demonstrated that you can use a model to sound like an authority in a space that you really didn't know what the product was.
Yeah. The other thing, actually, that's true, David. One of the issues, everyone talks about scaling their business, right? But you can only scale your business if you can scale your selling.
Yeah.
You can't, spending money on the delivery side of your business is overcapitalization if you haven't spent money on scaling the sales. Can I say that again? Spending money on the delivery end of your business is overcapitalization if you haven't spent money on scaling the sales. So the only thing that drives business certainty is revenue certainty. And I mean revenue from sales-based exchange of value for money. You can't drive business certainty through capital raising and debt and borrowing because it's an injection of cash. It's the sustained exchange of high quality and value for money. So sales-driven revenue provides business certainty. You can fix every other problem in the business if you have enough revenue. Don't have the right people, go and hire them. Don't have the systems, buy them. Don't have enough protection in place, get some insurance. You can solve every problem in business if there's enough money. Revenue drives business certainty. And so if you can't scale your selling, you can't scale the business. Now, so one of the things a lot of people do is the founder often starts selling. Who are the founders that are also selling? Who are the people that are the best salespeople in the business as the founder? And have the frustration that no one else can sell as well as you, right? It's not because, I'm sorry, but it's not because you're a good salesperson. It's just because you've got more on the line than everybody else, so your motivation is higher, and you get to do whatever deal you want to do to make the sale. The salesperson can't cut a deal just to close the deal. They've got to operate within parameters. If you gave salespeople the license to do whatever they like to make the sale, they would all sell, right? But they're not. They've got to sell at a price and for a certain offer and everything else. And so, one of the earliest things a founder should be trying to do is offload the selling to a sales team.
Yeah.
But the problem is, will they be able to sell as well as I do? But if you capture your genius into a model and you just get them to learn the model, they don't need to be the expert. They just need to be able to use the model, and then you can scale the selling quite significantly. So there's a guy in Australia called John Gian, and John is a promoter, and he puts people on stage, real estate investing experts and stuff like that, and they sell from stage and that sort of thing, which basically means you'd have that expert on stage one weekend in Sydney, one weekend in Melbourne, one weekend in Brisbane, one weekend in Adelaide, one weekend in Perth, and so they'll do a tour and then they'll try and make all these sales, right? And John thought that was a really bad way to run the business. He's got a very big business, big numbers. And so we built models for all of these experts. What that means now is the expert never gets on stage. He has someone standing on stage in Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne and Adelaide and Perth on the same weekend, different people teaching the models and making the sale, and none of them are experts at the subject matter. And then when the clients buy, they work with the expert. That's scaled selling.
Yeah.
So the challenge for everyone is to scale your selling. So I'm also, if you're okay with it, David, I've got a little gift, which is a video and a checklist of how you can use the simple bell curve to take lowest price off the table before you even start talking about your product. It's almost an upfront conversation that takes away the opportunity for the client to say, I was looking for a cheaper solution when you get to that conversation. If you're happy for me to do that, I'd be willing to drop that link into the chat, and then people can have that as a little gift.
Yeah, please do. Please do. And Kel, if you can just copy it, we'll put it in with the recording as well.
It's self-explanatory. It's real simple. It's a short video and a little checklist. The bell curve is a powerhouse in terms of repositioning on price, completely reframing the price conversation so that they should be talking to you and they should be paying more for doing it.
Yeah. Right? This has been amazing, Simon. I think you've got a few people sitting there going, oh my God, fire hose. But look, for me, the secret has always been, I've preferred flip charts over PowerPoint all day long.
Of course.
And I used to think it was because it was more human. But I think the way you described it is you're bringing people on the journey with you. Yeah. And my writing is terrible. My mum said I should have been a doctor because you can't read my scribe when I finish, right? But the point of the matter is people love seeing you build a model because they're in that model with you. And the way you just did it there was a perfect example. So first thing I'd like to do is thank you very much personally. And maybe if we can get everyone just to unmute and give Simon a big thanks for showing up today. It's awesome.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Whatever
Simon.
time.